Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, and we're an organization dedicated to helping companies of all sizes enhance their performance by implementing a stakeholder approach to management, and that is enhancing returns for their investors only by creating value for their customers, employees, and all stakeholders and communities. And the purpose of our program is to share the how-to. We're the how-to organization. We give away a ton of information, and part of that is getting the likes of Ryan Estis today to join us on how-to information related to meetings, how to make them more meaningful, how to impart wisdom, insights, actionable concepts that people can take home with them after the event. And Ryan Estis, he's founding partner of ImpactEleven, and Jackie Abasco is my co-host on these programs related to meaningful meetings. And we always like to thank our customers who are part of our community, and all of them are dedicated to helping companies improve engagement. And then finally, as I said, we're the how-to information. We give away a boatload of information. You can get started without ever paying a dime because we think it boils down to how to. How do you make this happen? So it's a good time to stop to share and to get to it. Thank you, Ryan and Jackie, for joining me today.
Thanks,
Yeah, it's a
Bruce.
pleasure, Bruce. Great to be with you, Jackie.
Same here, Ryan.
So let's get right to it, Ryan. ImpactEleven, what is your purpose, goals, and objectives of your organization?
Yeah, well, the mission of ImpactEleven is to put talented people with a powerful message in a position to make an impact on the world. And meetings and events are a big part of doing that. We produce our own meetings and events in a thought leadership community. So we're helping people like me, professional speakers, authors, consultants, coaches, trainers, develop their body of work and build their practice. That's one side of the business. And we have a robust community of experts that are doing that. The other side of the business is we have a corporate offer too. So we help leaders establish executive presence and influence and enhance their communication skills. And so we're producing our own live events. And we're also, as an organization, going into client partners and participating in their conferences as well. So I have a lot of meeting exposure in my world.
Well, obviously, Jackie, this is the perfect guest here because we're all about how to make meetings more meaningful. I'm going
Absolutely.
to kind of ask you, what led you to create this organization? What passion, what need did you see that made you create ImpactEleven?
That was a great question. It was the need really stemmed from a personal desire. So little context on me. I spent 15 years as a corporate executive. I'm a former chief revenue officer, and then I've spent 15 years in my own independent practice as a consultant and a professional speaker. And as a speaker, I deliver around 70 live events a year, predominantly supporting corporate clients and their sales and leadership teams. And I love that work. I mean, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker. I love sharing ideas and teaching. But around the time that COVID happened and the world hit pause, I sort of looked back and said, I had done that work for 10 years and it was great. But it's also very isolating. I think as writers and speakers, we're creating ideas. We're in our head a lot. We're writing, we're thinking, we're researching. And there was a sense, or I think a greater need for community. I felt it, and of course, some of my other colleagues did. And the impetus for ImpactEleven was really developed out of a mastermind with three other speakers, my partners in the business. We got together during that sort of quiet period when we didn't really have much else to do because our work was on pause, and just decided that we had this need and surmised that other people like us would too. And that turns out we were quite accurate in that prognosis, and no surprise if the four of us needed it, other people like us did. And so we've built this robust, thriving community of experts. And, part of our thesis is that we're better together. And I really think we are. And I think that's one of the things, just holistically speaking, that in a meeting, an event should accomplish, is to give people a sense of connection, community, and a sense of being part of something larger than yourself. And I think that's always the forefront of our hearts and minds when we put on an event at ImpactEleven.
Well, that's great. And Jackie, you and I have talked a lot about the importance of really rethinking the entire event format. And I think Andrea Doyle at Skift Meetings is the person who coined the term. Or maybe she quoted somebody who said this: "If you can do it in a Zoom, don't do it in a room." And Jackie, I think that's what was the impetus for creating this program, which is now leading to
Very true.
something I want to get right to the core of. The purpose of every event, you've just beautifully said, is community. And you can't do community in a Zoom. That just ends that story. And so we're going to get into that. But at the end of the day, there has to be a vision to that community if you're in a corporate event, right? It's all
No
well and
doubt
good to
about it.
build relationships, right? But there's a purpose, goal, and objective of that event. So let me ask you this. What are the big lessons you've learned over the years about meetings and events and how they really can be reconfigured to be more meaningful? What can we do? What is your experience of what can be done?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple how-tos. So one, I think, begin with the end in mind. I think having a clearly identified outcome objective. What does success look like? Why are we gathering people and making the investment? What do we hope to accomplish, not only during the time that we're together, but 90 days after, 6 months after, a year after? What is this? What is the catalyst around coming together this way? And if it's to build relationships and that's a primary goal, great. If it's to unleash new ideas or learning or direction and strategy, that's great. But get clear on the objective, because that will inform the planning and preparation, which leads into idea number two. The best meeting and events begin way before the meeting starts. So be thoughtful in the preparation and intentional in every single touch point, from the pre-work and the pre-reads and the learning on the front end to how people are coached to optimize their experience, to what happens when people arrive. And we're just, it's something we're so meticulous about at ImpactEleven. And obviously I'm also exposed as a speaker to 70 corporate events a year. So I get a wide range of experiences that I'm privy to, experience myself and also review. And then I think the other thing, just in terms of, evolving the experience, we've got to give more space and make meetings more experiential. So the idea of coming into the hotel ballroom, PowerPointing people to death for 8 hours and having a couple breaks for food and coffee, it's not the format that's most conducive, I think, to inspiration, community and connection, also to learning, and then actually a commitment to do something different, which to me is a big part of the reason you come together is you want to action on whatever the agenda is. And so I think the preparation, the objective, and the format are all things that are worthy of a lot of time and consideration and intention.
So Jackie, as you know, as a talent agent, we've asked you to, recommend people for this program that can impart wisdom on how, and we're going to get into some of your personal wisdom too, Ryan, because you've been
Great.
through a journey, and I'd love to hear it. But first we're talking about formats for meeting and incentive programs, and we're already hearing, Jackie, what you and I've been talking about. What made you recommend Ryan for this?
Uh, Ryan's very engaging. And when I first was turned on to Ryan, he was all about leadership and, how are you leaving your legacy to people? And everything about him, I really related to, because I think in the past I talked about Bill McDermott. I don't know, Ryan, if you know who Bill McDermott is. He was the CEO of SAP, and he was all about employee engagement, not just about making a billion-dollar company with SAP. His most important thing were his employees, how he was relating to them, for them to remember. His whole book is about remembering who you are as a person, not just about the money, which is very, very important, because a lot of people are just a CEO. People don't even really know they're CEOs. They've never met them. They have no idea who they're working for or where they came from. Bill came from delivering papers as a kid and buying a deli at 16 years old. And then going into IBM for an interview, telling him that he was not allowed to go home without a badge that says, I'm an employee of IBM. You have to go out there, and that's what Ryan does. He's all about putting himself out there, and he will be, I think you'll be remembered for all the things that you talk about, because that's what life's about.
Well, Jack, that hits me in the heart, but I have to share. I didn't know that, and I didn't know your background or connection to Bill. But about 2 years ago, I did an event for ServiceNow where Bill is the CEO. And so they're ServiceNow, and we're on this call just like this. And they're deciding on their keynote speaker. And the people from ServiceNow said, wow, Ryan, you've got a lot of that Bill McDermott energy. So this is the second time I've been compared to him. I met him. I don't know him. I don't even know if he'd remember who I am, but we met briefly. But yeah, he's left a great legacy, and I appreciate the comparison because leaving a legacy and impacting people is why you do this work. I mean, that certainly is, central to my mission too. So thank you.
Well, then, getting to that, what you both are talking about really is a vision, a new vision for management that Bill McDermott and others are great examples of, the founder of Costco, Whole Foods and whatnot. But getting back to first, Ryan, your vision of events. So let's get a little bit more granular about
Sure.
what that means. So for instance, I completely agree. I mean, look, we need keynotes, that MCs or people to tell a story or to tie things together. But I think, and I think you're saying, people really are increasingly going to events to learn together. How can we rethink our events to create collaboration, innovation, or new experiences together, rather than, as you said, I frankly can't do it anymore, and thankfully I don't have to. I just won't. I'm not going to do it. To go sit all day in an auditorium and a keynote speaker and panels that I can hear online. So, how do you recommend getting more granular and really shaking that up?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways. One, I think you can do a lot more pre-work leading into a meeting that creates a lot more space for people to connect, communicate, and work on themselves and what's most relevant to them while they're in attendance. So facilitating that, because let's face it, a lot of content actually could be consumed via technology in the lead up to the meeting.
Yeah.
If there was a state of the union, if there were financials, if there were things we needed to report on leading up to a meeting, we could do what we're doing right now and distribute that out to the company. And then based on that work, then we could work on it when we're together. And so that's one mechanism for creating the kind of collaboration in the room that you suggested. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, but then it seems to me, then you add to that having the speakers. Now, in the old model, the speakers, I, like you, have booked, gosh, I've run 30 to 50 pretty big events in my life. And you book your speaker, they come and they go, maybe they do a book signing. And if it's a trade show, maybe they do a little
Sure.
ball signing or whatever. But to me, what people really want is to be with the speaker, to be
Right.
with the expert, to have them at the table. Like, so for instance, like if you were in an ideal situation, let's say we brought you in for an innovation meeting, and we laid out in advance with the purpose, goals, and objectives that we had all come up with for the organization. Then we were going to get everybody together to get their interests harmonized toward that common purpose and goals across the organization. So, what would a role of somebody like you be, other than just getting up there and kind of explaining purpose and vision, of actually helping facilitate that? How would you recommend a company do that?
Yeah, well, I'd want to be involved in the process. And so I'm often consulting on the meeting, this conversation, the meeting agenda. Where does a keynote fit? What should happen after a keynote? What do breakouts look like? What work do you actually want to do in the room? As a keynote speaker, there is a stand and deliver keynote. And of course, I can do that. And I've done it for years. But there's also a way to create more immersion and a deeper sense of connection to the client. So I'll make this real specific. I'll give you a real practical example. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to deliver a keynote to a company called Campgrounds of America. It's a franchisee conference. They have camping sites all over the North America, United States, if you're into camping. And so I could have gone and I just wrote a book. I could go talk about my book and do the book signing, like you said, or I could immerse myself into their world, which I did. So I learned all about the company, their values, their culture. We had multiple stakeholder meetings. And then what did I do? Well, what any good keynote speaker would do, I went camping at Campgrounds of America. And I brought my photographer and I brought my video team. And we interviewed their stakeholders. We interviewed people on the campgrounds. We played with kids on the swings. We walked around the lake. We sat and roasted marshmallows by the bonfire. And I'm going to go in a couple of weeks and give a keynote about them and their world and their experience. And all of the media, all of the assets, including my slides, are oriented and organized to them. And I'll wear the Campgrounds of America hat on stage with their logo and their yellow shirt. And it's something I do regularly. I did it for IBM. I didn't go camping for IBM, but I interviewed 30 of their consultants prior to coming in to deliver that keynote. We captured videos in a format like this. So I had intelligence and actually could create an experience that was most relevant to them versus just talking about my book. And that's a way to create, I think, a different level of experience and connection. We call it ethnography. And that's my background. I mean, I have skill in doing that kind of interviewing, but I think it creates a unique, one-of-a-kind experience that our clients really, I think, seem to appreciate. So,
Yeah, that's a great idea. And gosh, this time is going so fast here. One more thing on, because I do want to get to your broader wisdoms of what you've learned about business,
sure.
in more general. But how many do you think that the typical meeting and incentive event that you've been, is as purposeful as you think it could be? Do you think
No, and
go ahead.
yeah, well, I just, my quick response is no. And I really like the word purposeful because I think that speaks to this actual there's a paradigm shift that's happening. And I think the purpose of and the function of a meeting is fundamentally changing in a post-pandemic hybrid work world. The world is changing so fast. And you see companies responding to this by saying, hey, everybody has to come back to the office 5 days a week. Many companies are doing it. Amazon's in the news a lot lately for announcing that. Why? Why is that happening? And why is it happening across technology companies? Collaboration and innovation, right? Everybody recognizes that we get more done, our thinking's better when we're together. Well, the reality is we're still going to be in a hybrid work world. Not everybody's coming back to the office every day. And I think that's okay, but it creates a different level of purpose or necessity for the outcome when we do come together. And so I think meetings, conferences, events, they've never been more important. But I don't know that we've caught up to viewing them through that critical lens. And to me, that's the disconnect or the gap that we need to think about closing.
Well, we have to talk about that. How can I not? Okay. Because I agree with you. I agree. It seems to me that a lot of meetings are, again, somebody else on one of our shows said, Sally, same as last year kind of thing, right? Well, we got to do it. When to me, there is almost no more better opportunity to foster alignment across the organization. But in other words, to get everybody's interests harmonized toward a common purpose, and when you manage by purpose and it's transparent, your goals and objectives are transparent, trade-offs are easier to explain because bad things happen in business. Bad things happen and there are going to be trade-offs. But at least if you have a purpose, goals, objectives, and values, you can explain it. So getting to this a little bit more, my hypothesis would be is that an annual meeting can really be, if done right, it can be the most powerful way to get everybody on the same page.
Agreed.
And so one last tip on how to do that. I mean, we could talk all day about that, but if you're sitting next to a CEO on in first class, and she asks you, I've got to get everybody focused on our goal. They're not engaged in our goal. You have any ideas for our event?
I do. I think one of the most critical things that the CEO sitting next to me and her executive team would consider is how prepared are they to deliver the message that inspires and aligns people toward that compelling vision of the future. It's funny, Bruce, we're talking about this. I've been asking CEO friends and clients a critical question. And so it's two questions really, but out of your question, the first is, how important is your ability to stand up and create inspiration toward this vision that you have of the future? Not every CEO would say that's critically important. It's why we have the annual meeting. It's a State of the Union. I'm going to open that up. And then my next question to my CEO friends is, well, how much training have you had to prepare for that high stakes moment in your professional career? And you know what the majority of them in that answer?
None.
None. And so we because we communicate every day, we have sort of this, I think, and because we may be talented at other areas or competent in other areas, I think we have the misconception that we're prepared to meet those high stake moments at the best of our ability. And so, that's part of what we do at Impact 11 is we prepare executives to meet those moments. And, like anything else, standing up and delivering an inspiring vision of the future, like a Howard Schultz from Starbucks or a Satya Nadella from Microsoft, who are brilliant at doing that. It's a skill, it's a competency. And I think executives that cultivate that skill, that nurture that skill, that are really intentional about it and give it thought and make that the best moment possible, you have a better opportunity to get the outcome that you desire. And that job is you mentioned this, I think, maybe before we started recording, but that job is very different than my job as an outside expert, because that job is also connected to everybody's day-to-day experience. Is the message we're getting from the platform, from our executive team, consistent with what I'm experiencing as an employee? Is what they're saying in terms of vision and values and collaboration, my lived experience in the room? And if there's deep disconnect in those things, it either has to be addressed in the room or people have to understand why. And I think it's real critical for CEOs to have their finger on the pulse of what's actually happening in their organization before, they're able to stand up, inspire, and create alignment. So for all of those reasons, I think it's worth a little bit of additional work to get ready for those moments. And we help our clients do that. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what you're
No.
really saying is that it's not just the delivery, though, right? You could go to Dale Carnegie and learn how to deliver. It's the substance. It's the substance. And so I would give you this hypothesis. The type of purpose, what we call purpose or leadership or stakeholder leadership, is not taught in most schools. It's not. And in fact, people do not appear on the balance sheets of any organization except in rare situations if you buy a company. And then there's really nothing that the CEO is held accountable to with people as an asset, even though we say they're the number one asset. So the answer, or maybe the explanation, Ryan, is that the CEO isn't learning that because this concept, this shift, and okay, I'm going to ask you if you agree and disagree if you wish, but this shift to really recognizing that people are our number one asset, that we can measure their impact, and that there's even research that companies that focus on people strategically outperform the market. The work of Irrational Capital that you should look up is incredible. That shows this clear link, and it's been actually verified independently by JP Morgan Quantum Securities Group, or Securities Quantum Group, I should say. So my question to you, Ryan, how far do you think business is along on making this shift to a people purpose-focused management, not for greenwashing purposes, but because it's better business?
Business isn't as far along as people are. So that, and again, you talk about a gap or disconnect. And so first of all, I just want to acknowledge you and I are deeply aligned on this. We agree completely. In fact, you could probably see behind me on the shelf there, that's my new book. The second half of that book unpacks our 9 tactics to human-centered leadership. Human-centered leadership, we believe, is the future of leadership, and it's a paradigm shift. So what was good enough to lead an enterprise up to 2019 isn't going to drive sustainable, profitable growth over the course of the next decade. And we have to get back to doing the thing that you said that most people say but don't actually do, which is prioritizing people. And I think leaders are, the role of a leader is fundamentally changing. And so, we could get into a broad conversation about incentive structures too. I think oftentimes the incentive structure is aligned to very short-term thinking, which isn't in the sustainable interests of an enterprise. So you could cut your way to better profits for the quarter, but what does that mean for 5 or 10 years into the future? And so we unpack how to do it. And you're right. Human-centered organizations outperform traditional organizations by 30%. They outperform the S&P 500 by 200%, and they get ideas to the market 2 times faster. And from my perspective, that's the right way to lead a better business for people, and one that achieves a higher probability of sustainable, profitable growth.
And the name of your book?
Prepare for Impact.
Great. And then if you had to, I hate to use, we have an international audience, but I'm going to use baseball as an analogy. What inning are we in this shift toward more human-centered management?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in the middle of it. And I think what's going to happen is the organizations that make the shift will accelerate to growth and success faster. And those that don't are going to continue to experience challenges. And we're seeing it play out all around us right now, real time. So.
All right. Well, the last question is, okay, so some young person comes to you and they're your mentor, and you know, you're sitting over a glass of Coca-Cola and they ask you, you know, gee, you know, Ryan, what have you learned from this journey? What have you've launched? You had good times in your life, you've had bad times, you launched a business, you saw the COVID. So what are your kind of core lessons about life and business? And you can leave your family love life out of it, but you know, in terms of business and personal life.
Some business lessons for, this is a young person, right?
Yeah.
A young person coming to me for advice. So the first thing I would say is that, you know, you have to enjoy the ride. And that's a little esoteric and philosophical, but I think, you know, you have to, I call it momentum through harmony. So you want momentum, you want to be growing, advancing, learning, achieving, but you want to do it in a way that has harmony with the people that you care about, your own well-being. And you see so many young people today suffering with identity crisis, mental health issues. And I just think taking care of ourselves is a big priority, because success without fulfillment to me it's not success, it's failure. So that's then 2 other key things that I would tell a young person. And I'll give this advice to my nieces and nephews who are in and around the college age, maybe coming into the workforce. First thing is hire your boss. Your day-to-day lived work experience, and perhaps even your trajectory in your career, will be shaped directly by the person that you work for. And so be very, very intentional about who you go to work for. That person, ultimately, use the word mentorship. They should be a mentor. They should be an advocate. They should be a coach. And if you select that person wisely, you could find an advocate for you who remains an advocate for the rest of your life. Go work for an extraordinary leader that'll have in large companies, you could have a markedly different experience depending on who you work for. That's just reality. The third thing I would say, and this might not be as popular in the world we live in today, but I'm going to use the word velocity. When you are young and you have a long road ahead of you, unlike myself, who's, you know, mid or third quarter career, you want to create velocity. You want to go, you know, people say, hey, you know, follow your passion. I actually would suggest it's better to go get really good at something. Be irreplaceable, be indispensable, develop skill, competency, a track record of success, create velocity. And when you create velocity in your career, when you are indispensable, when you are so valuable, over time, that opportunity avails itself. And so when you get to my stage, then you're in a position where you can do things like start businesses or take sabbaticals or invest in somebody you believe in. And, you know, we write about this in the book. I wrote the book with my brother, who actually runs the business of the Dallas Cowboys. It's a pretty interesting job. And we both talk about this idea of velocity and the some people would call it a sacrifice. I called it an investment. When I was 24, I invested in myself, my learning, my skills, my competency, my track record, my professional domain. And I made that a priority, and it created opportunities for me that I'm very grateful for. And I'm enjoying the fruit of that effort and investment now. So stay a student, keep learning, and keep getting better. Because when you get better, nobody can take that from you.
I love it. So my final question now, you're back on that flight with the CEO, but now it's a male CEO just to change it up. And he says to you, Ryan, I am frustrated. We're hitting our numbers, but we're not really expanding the way we should be. Um, I just know there's hidden value here that's not being exploited. What do you think that could possibly be? What question might you ask, or what might you make of something like that?
Well, a question I might ask, if let's say that you and I, Mr. CEO, we're going to quit. Let's say I convinced you before the wheels hit the ground to quit, resign, and that you and I were going to go start a competitive firm from scratch and disrupt your business. What would we do to take market share, to beat you, to win talent and customers? And if you can start conducting experiments around those things, you'll begin to disrupt yourself. And it's iterative. You want to get in the habit of conducting little experiments. And my mantra is disrupt yourself before the marketplace or competition does it for you. And the time to do that is at the pinnacle of your success, when actually it feels like you shouldn't change a thing because things are going well, but you want to do it at the apex before you start to have that regression. And I give the CEO credit for thinking that, but the real opportunity is to do something about it.
Well, by the way, I love that. I can think of a few companies like Blockbuster Video that maybe should have taken your advice, Ryan. Well, anyway, we're out of time on this great interview. Jackie, thank you so much for introducing
You're welcome. Thank
Ryan
you
to
you.
us. A
And
lot of
Ryan,
great
I'm a fan of
takeaways.
yours.
Thank you,
Sorry?
Jackie. I'm a fan of yours too. I loved it. It's a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
It is. I
Okay,
just want
well,
to say one thing,
folks,
Bruce, real quick. Ryan
please.
talks about the gift that you give away, like from yourself. And I love that because I just want to say to anybody that's watching this, one of the reasons I love Ryan as a speaker and they should hire him, how many speakers go out and go camping? How many speakers become involved physically and personally with the company that they're going out to speak for? And if I was in that audience, I would be so impressed. I just want to say, you impressed me.
Oh, thank you. It
Well,
means a
Ryan,
lot.
we're going to share that secret. It's a great idea.
Thank you. Share away. I have something to give at this stage in my life. I don't have anything to prove, so I like to give it all the way, just like both of you. That's what's so beautiful about a conversation like this and the work that you two are doing. So thanks for including me.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, folks.